All right, so I'm working on my table here. I'm laying things out. I wanted to show you this really cool Bridge City Tools tool. It's for transferring a line from one surface to the next. I don't use it very often. Normally I just use my square. I bought this a long time ago. I mean, maybe 20 years ago or more. I also bought this at the same time, and I've never used it. It looks beat up because it's been bouncing around in a box. This here I was using for something else for a while. The reason I don't use this is it's not square. It's not square. This is, you know, a lesson in you don't always get what you pay for. And I'm going to show it to you right now. So first I'll kind of demonstrate this thing here for you so you can kind of see. Should be obvious. And the right way to use this thing here is you want to put this on. I like to put my pencil line right on the spot where this line is here. Push this up to it. Now I know I'm golden here. I could take this and lift up on it, and boom, perfectly transferred. Now I have to, this top's got to be close to 200 pounds, but I got to flip it over. I have to transfer this mark under here. Same thing on the other side, and then I'll connect that with a straight edge. I'm making a breadboard edge here. Now, an even sharper pencil, because how you check square, again, this should be kind of common sense for you guys, is it's a nice straight edge here, perfect. I can't see it well enough here. I just did it here on this board. Let's try this one. It's funny. You can see the marks here. They look very close. But we'll go ahead and I gotta do it this way for the light. This one looks a little bit better. I guess this pencil isn't as sharp as I thought, but right next to it you'll see it's very, very, very faint. It's not gonna want to focus. Okay, hang on a moment. Wow, why does that not want to focus? That does not want to focus. You can see it though. Gee whiz. There we go. You see that there? Starts in the same spot, but it separates. Now, for some people, that's not a big deal. For me, when I'm trying to be precise, that's a big stinking deal. Now, I suppose I could have sent that thing back to Bridge City Tools at the time, but it was aggravating. It was not a cheap tool, and I just kind of forgot about it. I just recently stumbled upon this again. It's funny because you put it in one spot and it's a lot closer. There's a little line between the line next to it, but it's hard to tell because the pencil line was a little off. But yeah, it's just slightly off. I mean, honestly, it's like 1.5 millimeters, and you would think, big deal. Well, if I take my Starrett square out, put that on there, it's perfect. Let's do that. It damn well better be for the purposes of this video. It's exactly perfect. So, you know, this here is not inexpensive either, but it's a far cry more affordable than the Bridge City Tools version, which looks cool, but it's not square. And I've taken this apart and tried to clean it and everything else. It's just not, it was machined a little bit off. So just be advised, not always what it's cracked up to be. That's all. You guys have a great day. Be kind to one another. I was going to sign off. I'm not going to sign off. Let's just go ahead and keep working on this tabletop. Let's get this moved in backwards there, and then I've got to flip this top around, and maybe I'll film that in case I have a major accident or rupture a disc or something. I just want to point out I've had a hell of a time trying to square this table up. These two long edges are perfectly parallel to one another. It's the exact same measurement from here to here as it is from here to here. And I want to do my cut for the breadboard edge 2 inches in from the ends. Now, this top wasn't anywhere near square. I expected that. But as I was pulling and laying things out, I had to double check this measurement. Not double check, but something like, octagonal, like 8 times to get this thing right. This is what I have to cut off as waste. And then from this line back, I got to come back 2 inches to do my cut for the breadboard where I'm creating a tenon. And I've always known this, but this thing is not 100% square. I've got a few of these. Over the course of something that long, when you're trying to get super precise, it could be off a little bit. You flip it over the other side, and it's off a little bit. It's not cool. So anyhow, point is I ended up figuring everything out correct. I've got to trim this back a little bit. This is 1/8 of an inch out here, which I didn't notice at first. That's fine. I'll cut that off in a moment. We're going to cut this off next. But my line for where my breadboard edge is going to bump up to the tabletop is correct. And I'm square on both ends from here, on both of those ends. So I was able to pull from that line out on both ends, and that's what I did. It's just funny because when you lay the square on it, it's totally out of whack. But I know this is a straight line. I know these are straight lines, so I'm going to be golden. But it's like, wah, wah, wah. And you've got to just keep double checking, because if you make a mistake here, you're screwed later, I'm going to use my Makita track saw on my Festool rail. So one of the reasons I went with Makita was I already own the Festool stuff. I've got a longer one of these rails that's hidden in the van that I should get out for when I do the next cut. But just getting that out of the van is going to be a process. Getting a little binding there. This is 1 3/4 inch thick walnut. So for this cordless saw to be able to cut that, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I did a short yesterday, I didn't post yet, where I cut the long end. It was funny because I cut one end perfect, no problems, and when I cut this end, the batteries went dead on me. It wasn't from that cut. It was because these batteries have been in this machine for a couple months, and I've been using it with those batteries. Like, these batteries actually last a pretty long time. In the end, what I'm trying to accomplish is a table that's going to be 6 feet 2 inches long. So coming back, again, there's going to be a 2-inch tenon. And the breadboard edges, these are about 5 inches wide right now. They're going to be trimmed down to 4 3/4. So the tenon will go in 2 inches, and there'll be another 2 3/4 of an inch beyond that. Which you're not going to see any of this. It's all going to be hidden. So this piece here is going to end up going on the end here like this. I wanted to test this for straight. That's interesting. So that's got to be a straight line that I just cut, because that rail doesn't do this, and that means that this here, which I can't see with the naked eye, has a little bit of a bow to it. So I'll keep messing with it. course, I shouldn't worry about any of this because the table's going to be perfectly imperfect. So if there's a slight thing that's off here, it won't matter because it's going to add to the whole vibe of this project, this piece I'm making. Boy, it did come out nice. Yeah. So again, now I've got to set this saw to the right depth. I haven't determined how thick this tenon's going to be yet, but I think I'm going to have a tenon that's going to be about 3/4 of an inch thick. I want the tenon to be meaty enough, but at the same time, there's going to be a long slot mortise in here. So I need the tenon to be meaty enough, but I also need the top and bottom sections of this to be thick enough to where, you know, this is going to be a mechanical thing here. This is a necessity. This table on this end is worse than that one, but it does this right now. But if I pull down on it like this, it totally flattens out because, as you should be able to see in the camera, perfect, I just cut this. You should be able to see this here. I'm going to lower this for you. Take a good look at what you're seeing here. That's the center of a tree. That's the center of a tree. That's the center of a tree. The center of this tree is right up in here. These are the worst boards to pick for a tabletop because they're not stable. Every one of these can move. If you had a bunch of boards that were all centers of trees, what you want to do, and I talked about this in an earlier video, you can see the gap right here. So you'd want to rip this. You'd want to cut this in half. You'd want to take this much of this tree out of there. We got mosquitoes again. They're back, people. First day of mosquitoes. Mark that on your calendar. And you just want to use this. See how this is vertical grain, and this is vertical grain, and this is vertical grain, and this is vertical, and this is vertical. That's your most stable part. But right here, this flexes, this flexes, this flexes, and you don't want movement on a tabletop. So you'd want to rip these to thinner pieces. Obviously, even if the grain was going this way and you had thinner pieces and you milled all the movement out of it, it would remain more stable. But this is absolutely the worst thing you could do, is to use these pieces on a tabletop. Again, we're going to be fine with this table. The breadboard edge, as a necessity, engineering necessity, is going to work. And then there's going to be a trestle that's going to be back about so far underneath this surface. So there's going to be a nice flat strong beam here and here, plus the breadboard edge. So this will be pulled down tight and it'll remain flat. And it'll take and hold that shape. So let's see how far we get on this today. All right, let's see here what happens. I forget this thing moves around sometimes, so man, let's throw some wedges under this sucker. All right. This is pretty massive. This thing is heavy. Resting on a pile of dust here. Okay. It's as sketchy as it looks. This thing, I'm not exaggerating, it probably weighs close to 200 pounds. You guys have seen me. Oh, that is a problem. I'm going to stay here if I don't. Taking a chance here. Taking a chance, taking a chance. There's a dollop of glue there that is not cool. I didn't check the bench before I started working on this. Yeah, that's at like over 1/8 of an inch thick. This whole top has been rocking on it that whole time. I didn't even notice it. That's serious. There's probably some of more of that here. I should put a Fernie pad under it, but trying to move this thing around with a Fernie pad under it, if I wanted to tip this up, I needed to slide on this wood here. Okay, let's see what happens here. Oh, jeez. There's actually glue on the bottom of this tabletop. The guys that did the glue up, you know. It's fine. Not picking on them. They didn't know this was going to happen. Yeah, so there's some issues here. I'm going to go ahead and dig some of this out right now with this sharp chisel. This is on the other side where I plugged, right? We're keeping that void. Can't see any of this. You'll see it later. Well, you'll see it in a minute when I flip this over. I suppose I could have done this after I flipped it over. I forgot which way I was going. All right, here we go. I'm telling you, this thing is heavy. So obviously this is the bottom, and what was happening here, I'll show you. You guys know all about this void here. So there was a dollop of glue on the table. That wasn't from this, but there was a dollop of glue here as well. And then there were some pieces protruding here that I dug out. So I'm going to clean this out a little bit more. I'm going to open this up a little bit more. Even coming through on the other side here where I did that patch, I'm probably going to trim that and make the hole a little bit bigger. I made a suggestion to my client the other day on the phone about putting like a, I'm just throwing this out there as an idea. I'm not saying we're going to do this or use this exact thing that I'm about to mention, but imagine putting a meatloaf pan under here. You know, what's neat about the meatloaf pan is it comes with that other piece in it that has holes. So we're thinking about, basically, my idea is to put a plant here, poking up from the top of the table, like a cactus or something. That'll work where she lives. And so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here and then make that other hole. Let's just see if it works. It might not make sense because it's not a giant hole, so it'd have to be a tiny cactus. But boy, it sure would look neat. So that's the idea. I'm going to flatten this out a little bit underneath here, do some work, pull some loose stuff up, because my trellis pieces are going to go in here. I'm going to make sure that where, I'm sorry, did I say trellis? I meant trestle. So where the trestle beams go, I got to make sure that that's, I can tell you right now, that's not flat. So where they're going to go, I also do this other thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it on this table. I typically do it. You're going to see me in a couple cases. Definitely you're going to see it when I do the trestle base. I do these really shallow mortises to hide things and make it look crisper and cleaner. And one of the things I do with these big heavy tops is I'll do a shallow mortise here. And then when I set up the trestle base, I put the top on it and I wiggle the top around and the top just thunk. It falls down that 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, or however deep I make that mortise. It just falls down on top of the trestle base, and that locks everything together. And it's amazing how that works. It's really cool. So then if you want to put a set screw in it somewhere, you can do that, but you don't really need to because the massive weight of this is enough to hold everything together. I'm going to keep working. Okay, so I started to figure this out here. I'm trying to determine how thick I want my tenon to be. And then when the breadboard edge goes on, there's a slot mortise that goes in there. To create the slot mortise, I'll be using my hollow chisel mortiser, and these are my hollow chisels. Now I have 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 inch. I've got a 1 horsepower machine, so I can plunge this in. Shit, that wasn't good. I better check that. Make sure I sharpen that sucker up again. But this here is with that machine, I'm able to plunge into hard wood and make a square hole. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll move the material through the machine. I'll plunge it, lift it, plunge it, lift it, plunge it, lift it to create a slot in the part that's the breadboard edge that will slide over the tenon I create here. So what I'm trying to determine is, do I want a thinner tenon and then wider parts on the breadboard edge, or do I want a fatter tenon and thinner parts on the breadboard edge? And I don't want the breadboard edge to flex too much, right? The job of that is to keep this thing flat across here. So I've determined and decided, if I had a 5/8 mortising bit, that would have been perfect. But I'm going to go with a 1/2 inch. I'm going to make the slot in the breadboard edge thinner, because I think that'll hold this better over time. That's the choice I'm making. We'll see if it's the right thing to do, and you can see how that's going to work out here. So I've got to set my blade appropriately to leave me a 1/2 inch through here. I've got to cut along this line on both sides of the table. This is the bottom that's up right now. I got to do that on both ends. Then I've got to cut in along the line here as far as I want. I'll probably come in, I don't know, about 2 inches or so. And then I'm going to use a router, and I'm going to remove all this material, and I'll remove this piece here. That'll create a shoulder there. So I'll have a shoulder on 4 sides. And then I got to create the slot in the breadboard edge, and then that fits right over this like a puzzle piece. You might not understand it right now, but stick around and you'll see. So I registered the line, put a line across here, and now I'm setting the saw so that the tip of the teeth on the blade here is even with the line. And there's a stop on here, get that nice and snug. And now when I plunge this in, that blade will stop right there, and I know I'm going at the proper depth. Although, if I went a little bit beyond that, at this point it doesn't matter, because that would just be for the thickness of that saw kerf. As long as when I set the router up and I make sure that the depth stopped is correct for that, that's what's going to matter, because then this tenon, this top of the tenon, will all be exactly the same. So I'm going to set this up next and clamp down and cut it. Odd. I felt a weirdness down here. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm gonna have to do a little tuning on this end. That one's perfect. Meaning this cut lines up exactly with the other cut. I'm spinning it because the sun is over on this side and I can see what I'm doing better. I use the force a lot. Now we're a hair that way. What I like about the Festool track saw is you can see it, move it, and cut right again, and it'll be exact. This one looks perfect. All right, it's fine. Overthinking it. This would be better with a plunge router base because I could go over this half the depth and then go the full depth. I'm going to attempt to do it full depth and start on the outside and just not go in this way so far. If it pulls, then I'm going to have to do 2 passes and adjust this, but it'll be okay. want to check it on the other end up against the register mark to see if the depth changed. So I'm working kind of with antiquated tools. My other routers are in Arizona. I'm probably yelling. And this is my most powerful router. Put a register mark up here. So this used to be a pretty good router, but I've been beating on it for a couple decades. I need new stuff. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I need new equipment. Well, that's not right at all. Maybe I need to do this. Hang on a second here. You guys are watching it. I'm just letting the camera roll here because why not? I'm pretty good here. Yeah. Okay, so the bit moved on me. Oh boy, I might have to try to do this with the Makita, which is okay because the Makita is on a plunge base. The thing is, here's the thing. Why am I using a different router? Well, the reason is simple. This is more powerful and I can use what's called a 1/2-inch bit. Now you probably heard that. There was some chatter in there. But that's the shank on this bit here. That's a solid 1/2 inch. And that's just tougher. Typically you have less vibration that way, and that's what you want to use as often as possible. The other router has what's called a 1/4-inch collet, so it's not as strong. But I'll tell you, the RPM on that other machine goes at a rate that I really like, and it's cutting really smooth. This is a 1/4-inch collet, or shank compared to a 1/2 inch shank here, so you can see the difference. But I'm going to go ahead and try to use the trim router and see how that works. See how that works out. All right, let's see. Let's see how this does. This will be a good test of this Makita router. I've been pushing this thing already. You can see I don't take it easy on my stuff. I try to treat my stuff well, but I use it. Okay, that's way better. I'm going to pass it out here and get to the proper depth. Then I'm going to step it in, raise it, and do it this way, because you lose registration for the base here when you do it the way I just did it. And that's fine, but this is so much better than that giant 2 horsepower router. That's amazing to me. It's just new technology. I'm blown away by it and very pleased. The only bummer is I'm still getting used to this thing, like getting that lock to lock enough so it doesn't move on me. And then the other thing is this knob was getting loose on me, both of them. So I got to get a large, probably got one right here. I mean, I turned it. Okay, that shouldn't move anymore. All right. No, you don't need to watch all this, but I know some of you find that interesting. It's going to be a freaking super long video again, I suppose. All right, so removing all this, just on the top on both sides so far, ended up leaving 1 bar left on the battery. That's not bad. And I kept it running the whole time when I did this other pass here. So that's pretty good, considering this is walnut, you know, and I was going through about 5/8 of an inch with that little 1/2 inch by 1/4 inch collet bit. And it's an older bit too. So I also set this so I didn't get too close to my cut line here. So I'll have to trim this back. I'll have to trim that little bit of weird shoulder there with a chisel. I'd rather do that than set the machine that precise, because again, something goes the wrong way and you get into your finished cut, you don't want that to happen. That's just, I'm paranoid about that sort of thing. So I'll clean that up. I got to flip this thing over, do the other part underneath here to create the tenon. Then I'll be pulling out my hollow chisel mortiser and trying to slot. I don't know if I'll get these completely done today, but maybe I can at least get them on, you know, see what it looks like. Ziggy. One of you guys just sent me a video at lunchtime on Instagram. It was some guy who held up a piece of sheetrock like this and went to get his screw gun, and he ran back and the sheetrock came down and crashed right down over his head. And I thought, I didn't even post this video yet, and here I am doing the exact same thing. Earlier when I set this up and I let my hands off of it and walked away. Of course, this is resting on 1 3/4 inches. So, that's no joke, man. That thing is heavy. All right, let's get these done. We'll have a tenon here any moment, in about 30 minutes or so. amazing what a fan can do. I don't mean you guys, but it is pretty amazing what you guys could do for me too. I was pushing some air around. So this router, I gotta tell you, crazy workhorse. I went through the battery on this other pass before I got it all the way done. I was very close to being done, but that was an older battery, so it's okay. I think that is pretty amazing. Here we go again. I've lost count. I don't know if I recorded every time I flipped it, but 4 times or so now. Okay. Woo! All right. All right, let's get out the next machine, set that up, and see what happens next. It's 3:30. This is a blade I took the set off of years ago to use as a plug cutting saw, but when I want a nice thin kerf or get something close, it's the one I go to. Okay, executive decision. It's about 4 o'clock, and by the time I set that machine up and get it ready and set everything up to be able to start plunge cutting, it's going to be 5 or more. So I think what I'm going to do instead is just clean up these shoulder cuts, the chisels, and then knock off for the day. So I guess I'll be putting the breadboard edges on Monday, which is fine. There's no point in knocking myself out. I'm pretty beat up, a little tired here. And better to go slow and take my time. So that's it. What I did here was I put some wide blocks in the center so I can flex this table down. I'm going to set the camera up at that level here, or about that level. I'm going to attempt this here while I'm rolling, just to see if it can be seen on camera. And I'm probably too high here. It feels like I'm able to move that down. So right now it does this a little bit. So the idea here is that I'll have to put another straight edge underneath here, which I've got. When I say straight edge, I'm at the top of the trellis part here. Very similar to the breadboard edge. I'll put those down, I'll put the blocks on, and I'll put the clamps on like you saw me do before in an earlier video, which demonstrates it's really easy to move this. And I'll be able to squeeze this and hold it flat while I apply the breadboard edge. And then the breadboard edge should keep that nice and flat. That's how I'm going to do that. And I'll be doing that all on Monday. So that's it for now. You guys have a great day. Thanks for being here. It's pretty crazy. So I know this is like a little bit different. There's probably a lot of woodworkers watching what I'm doing. They're like, what is he doing? That's crazy. Fine. Also, let me raise the camera up here. So just a quick note on shop safety, all right? Because I got a little bit of grief the other day, which I don't mind. I did a short, and I was doing the, I was using this jig here on the bandsaw, where I was cutting these butterflies, and I was holding them down with my finger and pushing into the blade. There was no danger there, all right? I know what I'm doing, and it's interesting when I get these comments, especially if you're somebody new to the channel, you never watched me do any of this stuff before, you don't know anything about me, you think this is the first time I'm doing this. No. I've been doing this professionally for 37 years, and I've been using table saws since about 1976. So, do the math there. Yeah, that doesn't mean an accident can't happen. I get it. But I just want to go over something with you guys. Your number one shop safety thing here is focus. You've got to be focused on what you're doing. The people that have these accidents, they're not focused. They lose their train of thought, and or they're just not doing things correctly. And you're going, wait a second, you're not doing things correctly. I see when you're not wearing the eye protection, that sort of thing. I wear it when I really need it. Table saw throws stuff back at you. I always wear goggles. I wear hearing protection all the time because I've got pretty severe tinnitus, so I'm constantly trying to protect my hearing. My ears are ringing all the time anyhow, and if I expose myself to really loud noises, my ears will ring even louder for weeks. It's very annoying. It drove me to suicide, like suicidal. I was suicidal many times over this, and I've had to get myself to the point where I have to accept it. But the way I accept it is the fan at home. I have a machine that's the sound of the ocean at night when I sleep, and I constantly have something on around me. I'm always listening to music, something like that. The reason for that, again, is for the ringing in my ears. The bandsaw pulls material straight down, and I'm using a resaw blade. So the bandsaw is not as dangerous. It's just nothing's pulling you into the blade. That's all controlled by you. You understand? Something like a joiner or a planer, that's pulling into you like this, and something catch and pull you down there. That can be dangerous. I don't always use eye protection on the planer or joiner because really nothing's, again, flying back at me. I've always got hearing protection on. I'm always aware of what I'm doing, where my hands are. I'm 100% focused. Now, I've seen these videos. They just blow my mind. And a lot of it's for new woodworkers, even older people that are just new to woodworking. It's a hobby for them. They're not professionals. And they're setting up their machines. They got all the safety apparatus on there. That shit is just in the way, man. And I constantly do things that if you saw me doing it, if there was OSHA and this was a company, I'd be closed down, man. Like those rocket benches I made, those leg assemblies I glued up that have all these curves, I was cutting most of that curve on the table saw with the blade tilted, with that piece up against the fence and doing this with the blade all the way up, tilted out, and running it through, nice and easy. Total control of the piece, understanding what I was doing, knowing I can't do this at all because it would catch and whoo, fly. I know what can happen because I've been around long enough. I've had a few little incidents. One time when I was pretty young, I was probably about 21 years old, something like that, and I was remodeling a house in New Jersey. I was cutting a bunch of thin strips for trim. I was using a real crappy, skill or DeWalt. It was a DeWalt or a Skill table saw, direct drive, cheapy contractor saw. I turned it off. It was first thing in the morning. I hadn't even finished my coffee. And I turned it off, and the blade was slowing down, and I reached down to grab a piece of trim, and I stuck my thumb right in the blade. And I got some stitches there. Another thing I did one time with my current joiner planer, when you change it from planer to joiner and joiner to planer, the outfeed table, you got to make sure you turn that knob that pulls that table all the way up so that table's even with the top of that knife. That table's not all the way up. Your infeed table is already down. If that blade is higher, Well, now you got problems, and that happened to me one time. It was late afternoon. I went down into my old shop, and all I wanted to do, I was making these kind of weird coaster things out of mahogany, and they were short. And I was running that over, and I didn't have my outfeed table adjusted up all the way, and the piece caught and shot out, and my hand went into the blade real quick. And I lost the tip of this finger and the corner of this finger, and I mean the whole tip of this finger. You can see this finger's still kind of odd looking. But they put this foam stuff on there, and my finger grew right back. No big deal. Now the first one happened when I was like 21 or so. That second incident happened in, boy, it's hard to say. That probably would have been around, yeah, that probably would have been around 2000, so 24 years ago. Since then, the only thing that's really happened is a little graze, like my finger got a little too close to the table saw blade or something. Now they make these new machines, right? The saw stop stuff. That makes, it's bizarre to me, because if you just barely touch that blade, there's a brake that electronically is controlled and just slams into that blade and stops everything instantaneously. You think that's a good thing. Well, now you need a new blade, now you need to replace that other part, and that saw won't work without that thing in it. So you're out a couple $100 minimum, and you got to have that stuff on hand. If you don't have it on hand, you're dead in the water. You can't work anymore. So that's odd to me. I think it's smart for schools, I guess, because part of the reason why shop classes were stopped, aside from money, was liability issues, people injuring themselves. We had a kid in the bandsaw, and when I was a kid in school, ran his finger through the bandsaw. I don't know how you do that. You know the blade is moving. You know these blades are moving. You know that blade's moving. You know where your hands are. How the hell can you stick your hand into the blade? I know what the answer is. It's your fault. It's your fault every single time, because you're not focused and you're a nervous Nelly. If you're a nervous Nelly, you got no business working with power tools. Period. If you're constantly nervous that you're going to stick your hand in a blade, you know what's going to happen? You're going to stick your hand in a blade. You can't be nervous. It's the same thing with fear. Like people talk about, if you don't admit you're scared, like combat or whatever, then you're not normal, or that's not true. You're totally, yes, of course, you sense fear. But you've got to like analyze that fear in your mind and realize that remaining fearful is going to get you dead. You understand? Being fearful is going to create the accident. So you have to go, okay, what am I scared of? I'm scared of that happening. How do I keep that from happening? Focus. Focus. You've got to focus on what you're doing. Every once in a while, I imagine my hand going into a blade and my fingers flying everywhere and blood flying everywhere and splatter and being all that stuff. I got a great vivid imagination. I can see that in my mind. That's what keeps me from doing that. I had a woman ask me to help her the other day. Funny lady, lefty kind of teacher lady. I love her. You know, strong woman, you know, doesn't need a man, but asks me for crap all the time. And I always remind her, pretty good to have a man around, isn't it? She dropped a screw. She was putting her license plate on. She said, I need help. I already knew she was going to need a magnet. I went down there, got the magnet out of the van. I walked up, and there was a crack in the cement. And as I fished it out, she said, you know, I got over here and I looked, I saw that crack in the cement, and I knew I was going to drop the screw in there. And then she dropped the screw in there. That's how it works. That's how it works. As human beings, we get nervous about something happening. We literally make it happen because we're nervous about making it happen. Don't be a nervous Nelly. If you're a nervous Nelly, stay away from power tools. I'm just telling you. I've seen it happen before. All the people I know that have lost a finger or have those sorts of injuries, that's why. That's why. There's carelessness. You know, you have to understand what the tools are when you put the tool down. You have to remain focused. Before I turn the machine on, I know everything about that, how that thing works, what can happen. I've experienced all these things before. And when I'm done with my movement, whatever I'm doing, as I'm turning the machine off, I'm paying attention to that. When I turn the table saw off, I lower the blade all the way down so it's not protruding above the table anymore. I have built-in safety precautions in my mind all the time, even though if you watch me work, you'd be crapping your pants, nervous, thinking something bad is going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to let it happen. I'm not just going to go whoop and slam my hands into the machine, because I'm aware that that could happen. I'm not afraid of any of it. I'm not nervous about any of it, because I'm focused. So that comes from experience. I just had to put that out there. Because every once in a while somebody chimes in with this, I get it, man. You are not wrong. You're not wrong. But you also are not me. That's it for now. Have a great day. Be kind to one another. Hope to catch you in the next one. Monday, sorry it didn't happen today, Patricia, but Monday the breadboard edges are going to get on. I might even get them pegged and everything. This will be pretty well tuned up. I don't want to do a whole lot of work to the top after I get the breadboard edges on. I want to work on the base next. Once I sit this on the base, then I'm going to fine tune this, sand everything out, and apply finish. If I don't have too many, I had a few distractions this week. I said goodbye, and I'm still talking. I had a few distractions this week that led to me having days that weren't as productive on this project as I would have liked them to be. Again, it's because I'm all alone. I'm all alone. So anything else that needs to get done in my life, running errands, going grocery shopping, cooking for myself, doing all the stuff I got to do, I got to do. It's just me. I don't have that magic coffee table. You know, you guys that have girlfriends and wives, you got that magic coffee table. You can make that mess, just leave stuff out there in the middle of the night, but when you come home, everything's cleaned up and put away. You have no idea how that happens. I don't have that. Goodbye for now.